I approached you about, becoming a regular contributor to Faultline. What was your initial thought process when I asked you about this?
I always liked what you do to have an unfiltered opinion, although some people tell me that Tommy doesn't know what he's talking about, but he can challenge all those people. It's interesting to bring the two worlds together. People need to understand what is at stake. If, like UK has decided we stop terrestrial TV, then at the end it will be all about streaming only, which will be a challenge for our industry. The only reason I pick Netflix is because there's such a diversity of content, affordability, consistency. I understand why it's #1 platform on the planet.
Starting to think Thierry might be on the Netflix payroll. What was the real reason you left Harmonic?
That's a very good question. And
Welcome to Playback Pioneers, our series that brings fresh, unfiltered perspectives from the people shaping the future of playback technology and content experiences. I'm Josh Seeley from 5e Video, and I'll be your facilitator for this series, where we invite the brightest minds in the industry to talk about how they're pushing the boundaries of what's possible. In each episode, we'll hear from individuals who are pioneering new ways to deliver content, optimize playback experiences, and redefine how audiences engage with media. But what makes this podcast unique is our format. It's a relay-style conversation. Today's guest becomes tomorrow's host, passing the baton and keeping the conversation going. We're not here for the usual polished PR responses or scripted sound bites. We want real, honest conversations that highlight the challenges, innovations, and ideas that are driving the future of playback. In this first episode, we're starting things off with an exciting conversation between two incredible leaders in this space. Tommy Flanagan is editor of Faultline and co-founder of the Media and Entertainment Mixer series. And the one and only Thierry Fautier is an industry veteran and former VP of video strategy at Harmonic. Tommy will be asking Thierry anything he wants. No pre-vetting, no filter. Setting the tone for the kinds of open, dynamic discussions we're aiming for. So with that, let's get going. Tommy, Thierry, welcome.
Thanks for having us. Loving the format idea, by the way, the passing the mic. It freshens it up every week. People are bored of hearing the same voices, and very happy to be your guinea pigs for this. I'm kind of been a guinea pig for experiments throughout my career. So yeah, I'm happy to do this. How are you, Thierry?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Tommy, and thank you, Josh and team. As you know, I work a bit with Tommy. Now I'm forced to work more with Tommy, which is still okay. I can do that.
Forced. Every week he comes to me and says, "Oh, Tommy, can I write a bit more?"
So I have a lot of good ideas. A lot of good ideas because I come back, especially from CS, and Tommy was a bit surprised to see that there are a lot of things moving in the connected TV space and augmented reality space. So we are making some progress in our industry. It's not only about gadgets.
I'm Tommy Flanagan, the editor of Faultline, which is a weekly B2B publication. It's been going for 22 years, so it's a bit of a staple in the industry, a bit of a dinosaur, if you will. But we're freshening it up every week. It's got a reputation for analysing video industry trends in a lot of technical detail, but also in a lot of opinion. And I've got kind of penchant for interviewing industry executives and cutting through a lot of the noise, which is why we've got a very loyal fan base all over the world. So it's great to have Thierry on board. And I don't know if you want to do a quick intro background for yourself, Thierry.
Yes, so Thierry Fautier, I've been working for some time at Harmonic as a VP of strategy, solution, innovations. And more recently, I decided to take a new turn to my career and become a consultant of a company called Your Media Transformation, with a tagline, which is, when I read it, innovate or die, or transform or die, that I took from NAB, which was saying innovate or die. So I think our industry is at the point where we need to transform ourselves. We need to transform our industry. And as you can see, as an example, AI, when it was still dormant, nobody was really believing in it. And now people feel it. They see what can be done with artificial intelligence. And that's a typical example of transformation. We had the cloud before, and let's see what will come next.
All right, so that's probably a good place to start, kind of on a like sort of a personal level, because a few years ago, during your Harmonic years, and even post Harmonic, we were probably what you'd call frenemies to a certain degree. And then last year after NAB, we kind of buried the hatchet, and I approached you about becoming a regular contributor to Faultline, which is now the weekly column that we call Fautier Files. So I was curious to ask kind of because I don't think I've asked you this before, what was your initial thought process, when I asked you about this and you got the call up? Was there some kind of trepidation, or was it a hell yeah, absolutely,
No.
I want to work with Tommy?
Good question. So I always like what you do. I always liked what you do, to have an unfiltered opinion, although some people tell me, but Tommy doesn't know what he's talking about. And I say, no, he doesn't, because he's a journalist. He's not an analyst. He's not a technologist. He's not a marketer, but he can challenge all those people. So I was quite interested to first collaborate with you, because you are a free thinker, and second, bring you maybe a industry perspective, which is different from the reporter perspective. And for me, I think it's the two words have to meet, because the people in the technology space sometimes feel that they are not heard, and they push press release to people like you who sit on it and say thank you very much, and you want to get the insight from the industry, and sometimes you hear from people telling you, no, Tommy, we don't want to talk to you, we just want you give us your question and we give you our answers, and you say, no thanks, I'm not interested. So I think it's interesting to bring the two words together. And for me, my biggest interest is to educate the people. I take the Netflix example, where people don't understand what is streaming at scale. And they say, oh my goodness, how can they do that? 108 million session during the event. And just posted yesterday, by the way, did you see China did 350 million 2 years ago? So I think people need to understand what is at stake, and especially if, like UK has decided, we stop terrestrial TV, then at the end it will be all about streaming only, which will be a challenge for our industry, not only from a technical point of view, but also from a financial point of view. And if I push the environmental button, it could also be a challenge in terms of sustainability. So we need to educate the people.
Yes, and I must admit, I was pleasantly surprised at how quickly you accepted the offer. Given the history that we had. But anyway, that's all water under the bridge now, and I think we consummated that kind of transition from frenemies.
In English, in French, we call that entente cordiale.
Yes, and that's very similar to what happened at the CSI Awards at IBC, where we nearly got kicked out for our misbehaviour. So from frenemies to troublesome twosome. So long may that continue. Right, let's that was a good personal level to start on, but let's jump into some technology topics. And but before I know you want to educate and look into the future, but I want to do a little bit of a trip down memory lane first, because I type your name into the extensive Faultline article archive, which, as I said, is 22 years old, thousands and thousands of articles in there. And you first appeared, Thierry, in 2005, which is slightly before my time. So actually, it's 2025. This is your 20-year Faultline anniversary, so congratulations. And this appearance, you were quoted alongside Eric Cooney of Tandberg Television, which was, of course, acquired by Ericsson and lives on as MediaKind. And you were talking about how you were working with Microsoft's Mosaic and picture-in-picture features, using rapid compression to create 2 or more outputs for every stream, which Microsoft could then sell to IPTV operators, with that being very big at the time. And I'm testing your memory a bit here, but I kind of wanted to start by tapping into your experience and ask what lessons maybe you learned from that first appearance 20 years ago, and when streaming was really at its infancy, what we can learn from that today.
Yeah. So at that time, if you remember, Microsoft was the rainmaker, and they had decided on very specific things like the UI. And they were convinced that the grid without video was useless. Channel changing was very important. Having the next channel as a a picture-in-picture while you watch your channel was important. So they came to us and they told us, we like this picture-in-picture thing for many applications, but the way we do it, it's quite expensive. You encode, you have a dedicated server per channel to create the picture-in-picture, and this doubles the size and the cost, nearly the cost of the headend. And they told us, could you help us in that? And we said, yes, we think we can. And then we put our engineers to work on something which was unique at that time, is while you encode the main channel, you produce the picture-in-picture output. And this was possible because we had at that time a software-based architecture where it was possible to upgrade an existing system with the picture-in-picture. And at the end of the day, the things that was in two different servers collapsed into one server, and this functionality became so easy to implement as opposed to stacking and racking servers, which was expensive, complicated, and Microsoft loved us. And since that day, we became the preferred vendor. Once you become the preferred vendor, you sell without doing much because customers say, hey, you are on the list of the preferred vendor. And then at that time, of course, we were competing with the other companies, Tandberg and at that time, Cisco, Cinemedia, I don't know what was the name at that time, but they were all struggling with that. And I think we got a good ride because obviously Microsoft, Alcatel, if you remember, were a pillar in IPTV. And this gave us a very good runway. And at that time, I think my company was quite happy to have a differentiator that was a key feature for one of the leading ecosystem at that time in the IPTV space.
Mm-hmm. You said at the beginning, if you remember. Of course I don't remember. I was still at school then. But the part of the reason I chose that quote was because there's quite a lot of applications, mainstream applications that still don't have picture-in-picture support today. And I'm looking at that, reading that quote from 20 years ago, thinking, what? This 2025, 20 years later, how can apps still not support this? It's clearly not a technical challenge because you were doing it 20 years ago. So why do you think today apps still don't offer that? Is that a
That's
user
a good
demand?
question. I'm trying to see which operator, I'm reversing the question, which operator is really deploying picture-in-picture today? And outside Microsoft Media Room, I'm not sure many can do it today or decide to do it. Another topic, if you remember, Tommy, was the fast channel change, which was very hot at that time. And Microsoft put a lot of servers in the network to cache the content to make it faster. Is it a big topic today? I'm not so sure, especially when you look at OTT, where it takes you several seconds. So I think some of the ideas that existed, let's say, 10, 15 years ago, might not be as hot today. At that time, it was a hot topic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's probably multi-view today is probably the modern equivalent, I suppose. Yeah.
Correct.
And we've written quite a lot about the technical challenges behind that. Do you see that as one of the? It was a really big theme in 2024 and probably 2023 again.
Yes.
Do you see that kicking off in 2025?
Well, I mean, for some sports, if you take, for example, American football, you see that Thursday Night Football with Amazon, they do it. Apple MLS, they do it. YouTube TV on the NFL Sunday Ticket do it. I think Formula Y is doing that with Sky for many, many years, Canal Plus. So this is much more popular than the picture-in-picture, if we compare. And I think in the digital world, when you are on your mobile, maybe less intuitive on the PC and less on the TV, more on tablet, mobile, PC. If you have an interactive screen, it's quite easy to say, okay, I want this view for this car. I want to see, as a football player, as a football fan, I hate to see the replay of a goal where I don't see the defense. They show you the ball, but the reason you take a goal is not because the ball went to the goal, it's because the defense failed. And I want to see myself as a football fan, what happened in the defense. I want a camera that shows me all the players. If I don't see this view, I am frustrated. So that's an example. The fans, they want to understand why the goal happened. Of course, you have a good attackant, but where's the defense?
Of course, our friends at Tiled Media should hopefully have some deployments to talk about this year
Yes,
after
hopefully. We'll see.
teasing the app at IBC. But anyway, I could spend hours going through the archive and picking out quotes from you and various other executives, and fast forwarding now a few years from 2005 to a more recent ventures. One of the most notable encounters we had was during the standardization process for vNova's Perseus technology, which of course became LCEVC MPEG-5 Part 2. And we know while you were at Harmonic that you recommended the technology eventually, but there was, and I've had this conversation with a lot of people, and they still kind of deny to an extent that there was ever some resistance. But I spoke to people, there was a little bit of resistance in the early days from Harmonic and other compression companies, because some people saw what vNova was doing as a sort of commoditization encoder, rather than what became LCEVC and the codec agnostic kind of turbocharger that it is today. So I was just curious to go back through a little bit of the history there, and ask how that came about in your role in LCEVC, and whether you agree with that, whether there was some resistance in the early days.
Okay, so let's be very clear. Today I'm helping vNova for helping them to explain the technology in very simple words. I don't have any shares in the company. I'm just helping them to funnel that technology, and they are even surprised to see so simple words to explain the technology, which is quite complicated when you look behind the curtain. But at that time, in the 2010 years, Guido, their CEO, kept approaching me and other encoder companies, say, I have a wonderful technology. I can make a revolution. I have the best codec. And I told him, listen, Guido, you can come to see me every day, every month, every show. Nothing is going to change unless you get it standardized. And at that time, he was not convinced. But after several years, he made the decision. Maybe I was one of the one pushing him the further down the wall and say, you need a standard. And he made the effort, and it's kudos to him, to go to MPEG. It took him several years. But since then, once it has been standardized, validated, tested, cross-checks, then people stopped challenging the technology. And then came the commercial aspect, where this technology can be applied. And he tried different applications, the mobile, the streaming. And I think what was really spectacular is the Brazil project. And Brazil had a crazy idea to put one MIMO channel into one frequency. And it's basically asking to encode at 8 megabit in CBR, a 4K HDR channel. And you can go to any VVC specialist and ask them, can you do 8K real-time VVC in 8 megabit? Today, nobody can do that. And the magic is, thanks to LCVC, because you go and encode first the 1080p, then you do the extension layer, it is possible. And this has been proven by tests done by university. Even not MPEG people who try to sell you patents, university people, thanks to global efforts, have done testing on very challenging content. Rio Carnival, Brazilian soccer team. I mean, this is extremely complicated to encode. And comma in real time, because offline, yes, you can do wonderful things, but real time was the name of the game. And I'm quite happy to see that this technology has been adopted by Brazil for OTA and OTT. And I believe some other countries will be interested, at least to evaluate this combo of LCVC plus VVC to bring down the bitrate. Just to give you an example, people have been in the codec space telling us, oh, to decode, we need hardware. At the DMUX conference, we had the Facebook people showing us a very low-end sub-$100 mobile Android phone could decode 720p AV1 in software. In China today, you have VVC supported by high-end phones in software. And of course, you can do LCVC, but it shows you that the paradigm to wait for the hardware to be ready is not true anymore. You can deploy a codec, of course, with a good mobile phone and a good codec implementation on a mobile. And this is what is interesting for LCVC, because it can be done, extension layer can be done in software. So you can run this on connected TV, you can run that on the high-end phone. So I think that's where I think it's interesting to see new technology that can fit into existing infrastructure.
And that's very topical with TV 3.0 in Brazil, set to go live this year, very soon, this quarter, I think.
Trial. It will be trial in 25 and 26, because they will mandate the TV set to support the TV3 specification. So it will be commercial in 2026.
Of course, that's a big difference to something like ATSC3 in the US, is that it's not mandated, of course.
Yes.
The transition from 1 to 3. So anyway, live sports streaming. Thierry. Oh, actually, I was going to say, you mentioned Guido. Is that he's such an incredible visionary. You know, he could sell sand in the desert. That guy. So I'm very glad you brought up Guido, and I've interviewed Guido in a separate podcast and the Faultline podcast. So go and listen to that. I had to just get in a little plug for our podcast. But anyway, live sports streaming, Thierry, something we've written heaps about. Something I've tasked you with writing a lot about in Faultline last year, in fact, 2024. Notably the whole Netflix debacle. You wrote several articles in a series about that. Some people may be bored of hearing about this, but I think the scalability of sports is something that is going to continue to consume industry conferences this year through 2025. So what kind of technical changes do you see coming in 2025 at the CDN level and any other related components, if any? Is there going to be significant change this year?
Yeah. So if you remember, I've done an article. Of course, I covered the Tyson match, which was, I think, for me, hugely under-provisioned. The ratio between what was capable on the infrastructure and what was the real numbers is crazy. And I think Netflix suffered that day, much less during the NFL. So I think we're more into the normal ratio of provisioning versus what is being deployed commercially. I think what we see is two camps. So the first camp is the Netflix, and people in China are doing similar things where they build their own CDN. They say, I have a lot of traffic. I want to control my cost. I want to control my quality of experience. And then I realized that Netflix, it seems, has decided to use the same infrastructure for VOD and live, which can be questioned because it's very different pattern of consumption. But on the other hand, I'm not sure Netflix can upgrade this CDN in such an easy way. So that's the Netflix, and I would say the big hyperscalers in China. The others, take, for example, Amazon Prime, take Apple, take Peacock. All those are using traditional CDNs. And this approach works, but at some time, they realize that they need to collaborate more with ISPs. And this is what DAZN actually has done in Italy. They have put caches inside the Telecom Italia and other ISP network. They have also decided to use existing VOD caches and repurpose them for live cache inside their ISP network. And therefore, in that way, you can increase the scalability because you don't need to go through the peering point. Everything can be cached directly inside the ISP network. So that's a trend that you see happen. The problem, if you are still pushing pizza box in the traditional way, you are not going very far, and it's not future proof. I personally believe that the future is to build at the edge, the multi-edge network, the MEC, that would be a cloud-based architecture. You could instantiate additional caches if you have a peak event, and once the event is finished, you can repurpose the cache for doing something different. I think this is the future. When you talk to CDN company, they say, no way, we can't do it. When you talk to CDN vendors like Cinemedia and others, they tell you, yes, it's a very good idea. Once we have this flexible infrastructure, we can use it. For time being, it's still traditional caches that you push inside the ISP network. Last but not the least, multicast ABR, and peer-to-peer are supposed to save the planet. I still have my reservation because I know the complexity and the problems of DRM and targeted advertisement and gateway upgrade. And it's not easy, but this is considered by some service providers inside their own network, and some content providers also are interested to use this technology.
Dare I ask you about open caching? Are you bullish or bearish on open caching? I can't remember where you stand on that.
Very good question. So I think the concept is good to push caches inside the ISP network. The complication of the deployment is not straightforward. You ask a content provider if he likes open caching, he say yes in principle. No, I don't want to manage the caches myself. But for ISP, when I talk to ISP, they tell me I prefer to have an open standard and something that locks me to one vendor. Now, as you know, open caching mostly deployed by Quilt with limited success. Multicast ABR mostly deployed by our friend Broadpeak with a limited success. So it's interesting to see we have two different technologies who are supposed to be extremely efficient, but only one company believes in it, which for me is a sign there is not a broad adoption. We should not kill the baby, but it's a sign. Only one company is doing something. It's always a sign that IPTV, when we started, there were a few companies, and then everybody embraced it. OTT, everybody embraced it. UHD, nearly everybody embraced it. So I believe more in those massive waves.
Mm-hmm. That's a nice segue to some questions about UHD, because your other hat is the president. Is he the president of the UHD Alliance? Is that right?
Founder and ex-president.
Founder and ex-president. Okay, the alliance is, it's seen its ups and downs. I remember seeing some disappointed faces at the booth during some recent events, due to the lack of foot traffic and coming into the alliance booth. But the tracker, the UHD tracker, that's
the forum, the alliance.
Forum. Yes. Yes, the tracker that is a nice resource for anyone who wants to look at that. But topically, I wanted to ask you about AI's role in UHD, because it wasn't long ago you were in Shenzhen. You were presenting on this topic, which is fascinating to me because China is such a closed book. It's been really difficult for me as a writer to kind of tap into China and speak to people who are in the know. We all know about the politics and the trade wars. So what can you tell us about how the Chinese manufacturers are moving away from that US kind of based royalty system?
Yes. Royalty. I like the royalty and loyalty. There are two topics here. But yes, so you know that initially, for example, Huawei was part of the Ultra HD Forum as an active member, and then came the sanctions where Huawei at least could not access any US-based technology. So the Chinese community realized that they needed to have a completely independent ecosystem so that they can run their business without asking to President Trump if they can sell or not. So they created the UHD World Alliance. That's where I was invited, basically in Shenzhen last year. And they want to build a complete ecosystem where they have their own codec, their own HDR, their own NGA, and their own device. Don't forget the TCL, Hisense, Xiaomi, Vivo, Oppo, all those are Chinese companies. And they believe if the device supports those formats, they will be able to offer an alternative. Now, if you ask me, as the ex-president of Ultra HD Forum, when I see the diversity of HDR, the diversity of NGA, it's quite challenging to bring yet another HDR and yet another NGA, but maybe in some region of the world, you have heard about the BRICS. There are a lot of people who want to work with China. And I believe this could be one example of collaboration where people say, you know what, we don't want to spend too much effort on these standards defined by not only American, but let's say the legacy system. And we want for maybe the BRICS would decide to go a bit more in an open way with an alternative ecosystem. Now, back to your question on AI. Why do I think AI can change UHD? Is because UHD, we know the curve and we know it's starting to saturate. Maybe we have 300 services that exist in the world. But in order to give a second life to UHD, we need to use more modern technique. I take the example of SDR to HDR. I take the example of subtitling. I take the example of any additional improvement on the quality of video we produce on the screen. There are a lot of things that AI can do, and UHD is a new technology that can be implemented on new device. I don't think people are going to invest a lot in HD related technology because HD is what it is. We have watched HD for the last 20 years, and now it's about time to look at how AI can improve UHD. And you see a lot of people doing research in China, and that was the theme of my presentation, and I was quite welcomed by the Chinese community. Just to give you one number, we had 600 people in the room, and we had 3.5 million people watching live streaming.
Wow.
Just to show you the level of interest is huge.
Wow.
China is going to play a big role, I think, in UHD.
Yeah. So do you think because China is, moving away from the US sanctioned technologies like HEVC and the various HDR formats that you mentioned, could that be significant enough to trigger some consolidation in HDR? Are you saying that there are too many HDR formats? Do you agree? Yeah. And do you think China's influence could trigger a consolidation of those mainstream
of course, if they give it for free, if it's available on the device. The problem of HDR is that you need to have something which is across all the TV set. If you say, hey, my HDR only works on this limited set of TVs, in unicast is possible. You can send this HDR to that TV, that HDR to that TV. But I think the content providers complain there are way too many options today, and they are starting to, trim it. I don't want to give any name, but today I think we need more convergence between the different formats as opposed to divergence. Now, for geopolitical reasons, we'll have new formats coming from China. I think the jury is still out to see who is going to win the race. But if I told you 20 years ago the top 3, 4, 5, 6 phone manufacturers would be Chinese, you would tell me, Thierry, you are lying. This is the reality.
That's true. And from AI in codecs and UHD to AI in advertising, I wanted to touch on some advertising trends because Connected TV World Summit is coming up soon, which is always heavy on the advertising side and is probably going to be heavy on the AI side as well. So I've seen a few movements lately using AI to scale audience segmentation and improve targeting, and you've kind of seen the democratization of data analysis tools, which is a really nice development. But ultimately, the innovation in ad formats is something that's very difficult, and content companies and advertisers are struggling with. So I wanted to ask about what you expect to see in the ad tech front in 2025. Anything on your radar?
Yeah. So for me, I like company like, for example, Whirl, who have been taking the market by storm, especially the fast market by storm, try to understand how the audience work and what type of ads they can deliver for this specific audience, and now moving to ad campaign and not only the basic ad tech. So I think this is an example of how once you have the data and the information on the user, you can be much smarter on the type of ads you can provide. I'm still puzzled myself in 2024 to see so many dumb ads from YouTube. It's pathetic, and they are supposed to be the leaders in advertisement. So just to show you what's the growth we have in terms of being more smart with advertisement. I think advertisement is still in the very early days, the targeted advertisement. Some companies have done good in that respect. Of course, you mentioned codec and how to improve the video quality. That's also another interesting. So there will be next week, actually this week, a seminar on how AI can change compression technology, which is a joint ISO, MPEG, and ITU meeting, where they will start to put on the table, okay, what technology do we need to put in order to leverage what exists on the device? And the advice I give to those people is to say, check first what high-end mobile phone, high-end PC can do, and see what are the resources available. Before you invent new algorithm, try to benchmark what exists already. And from there, you can take a scale and see what will be the next generation device, what type of new functionality you can use on the device to be able to take advantage of AI technology. It takes time. It's not, if you remember the article we are going to release on the CES and AI TV, we said 2024, people hand wave and tell you, 23 people hand wave and tell you, so CES 24, people hand wave and tell you, we are going to come with an AI TV. 2025, it's going to be released. 2026 will have the return from the user usage. And it takes 3 years to release a new AI technology.
All right. I think that's probably a good place to kind of wrap. I wanted to, hit as many topics as possible, but before I hand it over to you, Josh, ending on a more light-hearted note, Thierry, what was the real reason you left Harmonic?
So that's a very good question. And when you have been 19 years in the same company, you always want to reinvent yourself. I've done that several times. And at the end, I was involved in more risky projects. One was related to CDN. And this project didn't really pan out. And at the end of the day, when I talked to the CEO, he told me, Thierry, I don't think there's anything interesting for you here. And then we decided to part. What came out after is a different story because the company was put on the block for sale. The CEO didn't manage to sell it. They had to change the CEO. And I can tell you, I'm not involved in that ending. I didn't write the ending.
Of course. Coming full circle from where we started, do you think Harmonic not acquiring Tandberg Television was maybe a missed opportunity, or was it not a good fit? It was a better fit for Ericsson.
I think Harmonic and Tandberg was really competing head to head. And although they acquired Thomson Video Network, it was a nice increment. But I think the big transformation of Harmonic was its own internal transformation, doing the SaaS, using the new technology like SaaS technology. I think this is the biggest transformation. If you look at the revenue, it's only 20% of the total video revenue. A lot of investment, still not profitable, now getting there. But the reason they are getting there is also because they have to cut a lot of people. So it's a complicated financial equation for Harmonic. And I hope one day the video business will be maybe married with another video business because there's a lot of assets there. I mean, it's a lot of, you see a lot of people using the technology every day, and you might hear things from competitors. Harmonic is not going to survive, and today it's still the leader. So strong company.
Yeah, there's definitely more in that story to come this year. Look at that, Josh. We rounded that out beautifully, almost like we rehearsed it, right? We didn't.
Almost so. And it's always a pleasure to listen to Thierry speak. I think I only had the pleasure once over an Amstel at the Connected TV World Summit last year. I think Thierry at our event, and it's great to hear you speak some wisdom to the community again today. Thank you both for that, right? I think it was a really interesting conversation. I think the kind of future of CDNs, live streaming media, ad tech is what we're going to see plastered over a lot of the events all year, right? So I think these are the topics people need to understand. And yeah, I think you explained it really well, Thierry, in terms of dumbing down the way that it's communicated so more people can understand the problems and how we solve these challenges, right? So thank you very much for that. We like to end with a few quick lightning questions. So these are a bit serious and a little bit fun, right? So I'll throw to Tommy first. What TV show are you streaming right now?
Oh, you've thrown me under the bus here. I'm currently watching The Traitors, which I haven't seen the previous series. I've been dragged into watching it. This series by my other half. For anyone who doesn't know about The Traitors, it's kind of a reality show, murder mystery kind of series with some very funny results. And actually, this is topical because we were talking the other day about how we talk a lot about the gamification of TV, and The Traitors is the kind of show that would be perfect to gamify because they have the two kind of teams, the traitors and the faithfuls, and it'd be great if you as a viewer could play along and not know who the traitors were. Basically, the faithfuls have to figure out who the traitors are, and you as the viewer, you know who they are, But if there was a way where you could play along with the faithfuls and not know, that would be a really, really interesting way to gamify the TV experience. So I think that's if they can figure out a way to do it, that'd be brilliant. Sorry, that was a longer answer than I expected, Josh. But
that's okay, Tommy. No worries. Thierry, what you streaming?
Right now, I'm not streaming much because I was busy with the break and working for Tommy. He's asking me to write every week, so it takes me some time. No, just kidding. So for me, I'm not streaming right now, watching more sports, but the last series that really impacted me was called on Netflix, The Serpent, which is the story of a guy who's basically killing people just to steal their money and their passport. It's a true story.
The Serpent's great, yeah.
And that's what scared me the most. My wife told me, no, I cannot watch too many people dying in this series.
Who's your US team and your US sport, by the way, Thierry?
The US sports I like the most, I would say I love to see LeBron James when he comes and perforate the defense. For me, it's absolutely outstanding. I'm not a American football fan, so I don't really understand intricacies. Of course, I like to see tennis in US. The US players are quite good, not yet there. Europeans are dominating. And of course, I'm waiting for the World Cup to come in 2026. And I hope the French team will win this time.
Hopefully, you have something to say about that in England, right? But we will see.
It's always competition. Competition is there.
Unfortunately, it's not normally much of a competition when the French are involved.
Yeah,
it's good. It's
true.
Good. It's good. It's a good topic. The World Cup in 26. A lot of people are going to watch. As I can tell you, there's pressure on the American team, which is subpar today. And they know if they play in front of their fans at a subpar level, it's going to be bloody. So they are preparing themselves. It's a serious topic.
Let's see what it brings. Next question. Tommy, what's your go-to streaming platform?
Depends who's watching, me or the kids. If I'm going downstairs and the kids are wanting to watch something, then it's probably Disney Plus. And for us, I'm watching a lot of Now at the moment. The Sky streaming platform. So yeah, it's probably those two at the moment.
Nice. Thierry?
Netflix. And the only reason I pick Netflix is because there's such a diversity of content. Diversity, quality, affordability, consistency. I understand why it's number one platform on the planet. It's
starting to think Thierry might be on the Netflix payroll.
I am. It's my next gig. After I beat them up on CDN, they tell me, Thierry, okay, we take you on the content side. You are telling stupid story. But also on what I like on Netflix, it's not only a content company, it's also a tech company. That's why you have two CEOs. And they really work hard to bring the experience at a different level. And back to our tech conversation, I was not impressed by the quality of the live sports streaming, as opposed to VOD, which has hopefully more bits and more time to encode, but live was a bit subpar in terms of quality compared to the VOD experience.
Agreed with you there, Thierry. Tommy, what fad trend in video technology are you hoping to see the back of this year?
The back of... There's so many. The one that's really bugged me the last few years is the whole super aggregation one. If we're talking about operators, like personally, I don't think there's anything super about it. There's a level. I can't say AI in general because that's just too broad. But there's a level of AI that I want to see the back of, the kind of superficial AI. I want things to get more mature and deeper and start showing actual real life applications and use cases for it. So these products that just slap AI on their booths and on their products at shows just to say that they're doing something, when you scratch below the surface and it's not. There's just maybe a couple of automated workflows or something. I want to see the back of that as well. That's just a couple off the top of my head.
I will stick to my gun, as I wrote in the CSI magazine for my prediction 2025, live sports streaming at scale. This is the biggest challenge we have ahead of us. We can do a poor job. That's possible. To do a good job, not an excellent job, we need a lot of efforts. We need a lot of architecture. We need a lot of collaboration between CDN and ISPs. And we are getting there, but we have not, as you say in English, the fat lady has not sung yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he might have misunderstood the question, Thierry. Josh asked, "What trend do you want to die? What do you
To
not
die, I
want to
thought
play?"
will be back. Die, I don't know if anything is bugging me today. I would say things that should disappear. Maybe virtual reality, expectation. People keep doing it and wondering why it doesn't take off. I personally, coming back from CS, believe much more on smart glasses. But I don't want this to die. I want this to grow, actually, and maybe replace VR by AR.
I think the VR porn and VR gaming markets are too big for VR to die.
No, not sure VR porn is that a big market. VR game, yes, I agree, because I see a lot of people playing.
Well, people aren't going to talk about it openly, are they?
I don't know, but
porn
it's
does
for
take
me,
a
VR
huge
is a bit, is a bit
swab of our industry.
not successful, and maybe we need to move on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for that. I agree. I have a Meta Quest 3 and I'm hoping that the kind of streaming aspects of it improves, right? It's very good for playing golf on it, but not very good at much else at the moment. Death Row Mill, Tommy?
Oh, Death Row Mail. Oh, it's got to be a Sunday roast.
Sunday roast. Good shout. Very good shout. Thierry?
I don't get the question. What is a death row meal?
So if you're up for a death sentence,
Yes.
let's say, right, you have
Yes.
one more meal. They give you
The
one more meal
the
of
last one,
whatever
okay.
you choose.
Lamb with
Lamb.
with small beans. Very nice. Good
Lamb
sauce.
with small beans.
Small beans.
Interesting. I should note that as a vegetarian, my Sunday roast would obviously have a nut roast or some
I was
sort of,
surprised, Josh.
mushroom Wellington.
I was surprised by the question, Josh. I didn't know you were. Death row.
You answered it well.
Absolutely
Maybe I have a
blindsided.
hearing problem. My internet connection is not good. Death row. What is this?
I think it's just a Bristolian accent, yeah, right?
No, it's good. It's good. It's good. It's completely left side. You took me from the left flank.
Yeah.
That's what we aim to do here on the Playback Pioneers podcast, right? Couple more from me. Biggest mistake in your career, if you were to say one, Tommy?
Hiring Thierry. No, I'm kidding. Oh, that's tough. Oh, I wish my boss was here because he would have a list as long as his arm about mistakes that I've made. Holding my hands up, I think there are cases where I have been too kind of aggressive in my writing, and I have pissed off a lot of people. And part of that is a level of immaturity in the early years. You just kind of, you want people to take notice, you want to get yourself noticed, you want to get your writing noticed. And sometimes there was a kind of a point where I've overdone it and overcooked it. And I think since having kids, I've definitely kind of lost my edge a bit and become a bit more soft around the edges and fluffy and rebuilding relationships. So don't get me wrong, Faultline is still very bullish in its approach, but yeah, that's probably where I'd hold my hands up. I'm interested to hear Thierry's answer.
Yeah. So I will not say accepting to work for Tommy because this is not true. But more an observation I've made. I always wanted to come in Silicon Valley. When I started to do my first internship, I wanted to come to Silicon Valley. I wrote letters to company and they never responded to me. So, okay, I will not go then. Then I came in 1995 for a business trip here, and I thought I would meet executives that were not available, had to fly, and I could never meet them. And then I came in 2000, which was for me the third attempt. My only mistake is not to do that earlier, but I'm still happy to be in the Silicon Valley and to feel it, to see how people think, how people do things American way, and I compare to European style or Asian style, very different.
Mm-hmm. One of my mottos is always, it's not the things you do you regret, it's the things that you don't do. And it's something that I've used ever since I was a kid at school, when I would get in trouble. Yeah, well, Dad, I might have been in trouble at school, but it's the things that you you regret. It's not the things you don't do. So I just use it as an excuse to get in trouble, basically. But that's something that I've held with me throughout my my career now. So I can't say no to opportunities.
Never should. I think that's a very good answer, Thierry. Thank you for that. Okay, so finally a bit of a lighter one. Party trick. Do you have a party trick, Tommy?
I don't think I do, I could down a pint pretty quickly, but
I've seen that.
Yeah, you've seen it. But I don't know. I wouldn't say I have a party trick per se. Thierry?
Okay.
Oh, my dog doesn't agree with you, Tommy. Myself, I like to do tricks with cards and fool the people, and they ask me to do it again and again and again, and I measure their intelligence if they find the way the trick works. And it's always funny to see people, but you saw that card, you saw that. No, I didn't see anything. I like to see the reaction of people.
I look forward to being the victim of that at the Connected TV World Summit, Thierry. Okay, well, look, thank you, guys. I guess to end from me, as I mentioned at the start of this, this is a relay type podcast, right? So essentially, the baton will be passed of who is hosting. And as such, we want our host to pass a question to our next host for our next guest. So, Tommy, over to you.
I nearly
What's
forgot
our
about
question?
this bit. Yeah. So I think I've kind of got an inkling about who the next guest might be, but nothing is set in stone yet. So I kind of keep it a little bit generic. So I want you to ask them, Thierry, getting into the sustainability topics. That's not something we touched on today. Hoping you can pick that up in the next episode and ask about whether, with CFOs, sustainability being on the agenda of CFOs in the last few years, I'm wondering how they can pick that back up on their agenda, because I'm probably not alone in observing that the curve has flattened, interest has dropped off in, energy saving and emission saving initiatives among companies in our industry. So, and AI to an extent has drowned out a lot of that positive momentum that was achieved during and post-COVID. So I'm just curious about initiatives and projects that can get that back, get sustainability back on the table for CFOs in particular. That's my
question.
Kind of broad question.
An important topic and a very good question.
Yes. And hopefully one that we'll bring to the Bristol Media and Entertainment Mixer soon.
Very much so. Obviously, we showcased that in the wrap-up awards, right? Johan Berlin took home that award and done very well deserved for it. But okay, both of you, thank you very much for that. It's been great to kickstart this series with an absolute industry icon like Thierry. Not you,
Thank
Tommy.
you very much.
But it's always a pleasure to see you, Tommy, as well, right? So thank you very much for that, guys. And on to the next.
Thanks for having us. That was fun. And good luck with passing the mic on the next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.